So, this map may or may not be up to date, but you can see that Ukraine occupies a large area, squeezed in between, bordered by Russia, all over the place. Belarus. I don't know if you were here for my talk on Belarus, but that's an interesting place. Poland, Slovakia, Hungary, Romania, and Moldova. Another interesting place. I did a talk on Moldova here. So the Black Sea in the south and the Sea of Azov. And this little place is Crimea. So we'll talk about that later. So as you know, it's currently in a territorial dispute with Russia over the Crimean Peninsula, which Russia annexed in 2014, but which Ukraine and most of the international community recognize as Ukrainian. That may be a done deal. Now there seems to be more concern about Russia annexing the whole country. Including Crimea, Ukraine has an area of 233,000 square miles, making it the largest country entirely within Europe and the 46th largest country in the world. There are about 45 million people living there, making it the 32nd most populous country in the world. So there's plenty of space. Very nice place to visit, actually. And it's been around since 32,000 BC. Now, how anybody knows that, I'm not sure. It's a long time. Kiev is the capital, and we'll talk about that. So, this is my little journey. I started in Moldova, where I'd spent some time, and took a train to Odessa. Very interesting train ride because there was a Ukrainian merchant marine young man there who spoke excellent English. So we had a long time to chat. People came off and on. A couple who were both lawyers in Ukraine came on, but they left. But this guy and I chatted for a long time. Anyway, I went to Odessa, where I spent a few days. And from Odessa, I took a train to Sevastopol, and then a bus to Yalta, and then a flight to Kiev. So that was my itinerary. So the vast majority of Ukraine I know nothing about, but that couple of weeks there entitles me to be an expert, so I'll share what I know with you. I first went to Kiev during the Soviet Union times. We'll talk about that. And then I went in 2007. So first Odessa and Kiev, and then Crimea, Sevastopol, and Yalta. So, as I said, it's the third most populous, no, I didn't say that, but Odessa is the third most populous city of Ukraine, a major seaport, which we'll definitely talk about, and transportation hub on the northwestern shore of the Black Sea, quite multi-ethnic, founded by Catherine the Great in 1704. And it was a very important city during Imperial Russia. This connection with Russia has been off and on for the last 300 years, sometimes very difficult relationship as it is now. It is a major transportation hub integrating with railways. That's how I got there. And oil and chemical processing plants are connected to Russia and Europe by way of strategic pipelines. So sometimes when Russia stops the oil flow to Ukraine, then Ukraine doesn't have any oil to export to Europe, which leaves all these places very cold in the winter because Russia likes to use oil as a leverage. So Odessa's growth was interrupted by the Crimean War, 1853, which we'll talk about when we get to Sevastopol. And that's when the British and French naval forces bombarded it in a very brutal way. It did recover, and Odessa became Russia's largest grain exporting port. And then in 1866, the railroad linked it to Kiev and Kharkiv, which I don't know. So this is the train station. Very frustrating because there wasn't anybody I could speak English to, and I don't know Russian or Ukrainian, and I had to find a ladies' room. I don't remember if I did or not. And also I wanted to buy a ticket to Sevastopol, and I didn't know how to communicate with anybody. Frustrating. The architecture in Ukraine generally, and in Odessa particularly, is very interesting. Some of these onion dome features are here. Odessa is famous for its beautiful tree-lined avenues, which in the late 19th and 20th century made the city a favorite year-round retreat for the Russian aristocracy, which explains some of the very elegant architecture. This is the Odessa Opera House, very famous, near the very famous Odessa Steps, which we'll talk about in a minute. This is the Odessa Philharmonic Society Theater. I'm not sure, I was in here, I went to hear a concert, but not a classical music concert. This is some delicious Ukrainian food. If you go to the European Deli around the corner off Regents Road, you get this food. I bought a whole lot of it the other day for a party. The city became the home of a large Jewish community during the 19th century, and by 1897, Jews were estimated to comprise some 37% of the population. This becomes very important later on during the Second World War. They were, due to interethnic conflict that had existed throughout the 19th century, repeatedly subjected to anti-Jewish backlash. Pogroms were carried out in 1821, 1859, etc. Many Odessan Jews fled abroad after 1882, particularly to the Ottoman region that became Palestine, and the city became an important base for the support of Zionism. We'll show some very dramatic scenes about anti-Semitism later on. This is a big synagogue, which I don't think is functioning. I have to show this picture, which I hate. The main street of Odessa is generally very pretty, but there are also, and this is true of a lot of the countries in this area, like Moldova, there's a lot of casinos that have moved in, I guess to increase the revenue. And this is one of them with a restaurant in it. It's certainly not where I stayed, but it is really ugly, and a lot of them are really terrible looking. This is a view from my window. I thought it was a mosque, but of course it's not. It's a Russian church. This is one of the most moving things I saw. These are tombs of the unknowns from so many different wars, not just World War II. And so many children were killed during those battles that they have children patrolling these tombs. So these are children, and that's all. They don't have regular soldiers, just children. I don't know whether they're in the military or what they are, or scouts or something. It just shows that they're really children. They seem to take their job very seriously. It is very serious. Very moving, I thought. That goes right out to the Black Sea. So, following the siege of Odessa and the Axis occupation, which lasted for a couple of years, approximately 25,000 Odessans were murdered in the outskirts of the city and over 35,000 deported. It's a tragic country when you think of all the battles that they've been through and are going through now. Most of the atrocities were committed during the first 6 months of the occupation, which officially began on October 17, 1941, when 80% of the 210,000 Jews in the region were killed. That's Baba Yar, which we'll talk about later. Later slaughters occurred during the Soviet occupation. The city has seen violence in the 2014 pro-Russian conflict in Ukraine that we've heard so much about during the 2014 Odessa clashes. We'll see that later. The 2nd of May 2014 Odessa clashes killed 42 people. That's a pretty bridge there. It's a very pretty city, Odessa. I liked it very much. Oh, so I was staying in this hotel and I didn't know how to get around exactly, and there was a group of Swedes and I had heard that they had a tour, and so I inquired at the desk and they put me on to somebody from that group, and I asked if I could join the tour that morning, and so I did, which was very helpful. It was in English, fortunately. And one of the things we passed was a concert hall with this sign in front of it, which sounded like a very interesting group of maybe Mongols. I couldn't quite figure out where they were from. And and Led Zeppelin had something to do with it, which I didn't understand at all. But I decided I would go that night. So it was at 7 o'clock, and I did go. This is the theater. I don't think it's that Philharmonic theater that I showed you the interior of before, but it's a very nice theater. And this is the group, which of course you can't tell what it sounds like or even what it looks like. But they were a lot of fun. I guess they're dressed like Mongols. But I don't know who they really are. Ukrainians, I think. And go back to that a second. Sitting next to me was a young man, no, not a college student, an engineer, I guess, who spoke very good English. So we had a wonderful conversation. We went out for coffee afterwards, and he walked me back to the hotel. So that was really a very nice circumstance. Otherwise, I certainly wouldn't have known anybody there. But, you know, when you travel, people are very friendly, and so many people do speak English now that it turns out to be okay, but not in the train station. This, talking about speaking English, this was a restaurant I found not too far from my hotel, which had wonderful food and this amazing menu in English. I went back there about 3 times. I liked it so much, and they had Ukrainian music. It was really a wonderful place. Some borscht. This is it. This is some of the buildings around. So this is the beach area. There's a very nice beach area. Of course, it was July. It shouldn't have been cold, but there wasn't anybody on the beach when we were there. But there are many sandy beaches, which are very nice, and also in the Crimea. The beaches are not good sand, but they're still very nice beaches. This one looked like it had a lot of things going on. This is what we saw. But you can see that there's little amusement places there. It's a beach scene. I didn't see it, but it was. I found it. And I just want to mention that Ukrainian women are a very big export for the country. Do you know that? My son-in-law lives in Australia. He's Australian. He has a twin brother who used to export Ukrainian women to Australia. And he married one, but the government didn't think it was a real marriage, so they deported her. And he moved. He moved to Ukraine. He now lives in Kiev. He's been there a long time, 10 years or something like that. Occasionally visits Australia, but this is his home. And I don't know if he's still in the exporting women business or not. You can see the famous Ukrainian eggs there. It must be cold. Look how people are dressed. I can't remember.
Easter.
I don't know if it was Easter, maybe. There's a very traditional Ukrainian restaurant, and this is how the waitresses dress, up near the Opera House. And this is what it looks like inside. This is their city hall. This tells you how far it is to get to Vancouver. 9,000, it's kilometers, of course. 9,000 miles. It's an old picture from the 1930s. You don't see this kind of traditional dress except among waitresses and maybe in the villages on special holidays, I think. This is a very interesting thing. April Fool's Day is their big celebration. I think Odessans are rather quiet and reserved by nature. But on April Fool's Day, they get all dressed up, and they are very colorful, and it's called Yumorina. So if you're around Odessa or any part of the Ukraine on April Fool's Day, it sounds like a good place to be. These are the Potemkin stairs that I mentioned before, constructed in about middle of the 19th century. And in Sergei Eisenstein's film, The Battleship of Potemkin, they play a major role. How many of you have ever seen that movie? We should show it here. It's a famous movie. And it has to do, this is my view of the stairs. The other was Google. It had to do with a mutiny on the battleship Potemkin, because the sailors were given rancid meat to eat, and so they revolted. And here we go. It was a workers' uprising supported by the crew of the Russian battleship Potemkin, which was restored after this. The ship became famous when the crew rebelled against the officers in June of 1905 during that year's revolution in Russia, which is now viewed as a first step toward the Russian Revolution of 1917. The silent film, The Battleship Potemkin, commemorated the uprising and included a scene where hundreds of Odessan citizens were murdered on the Great Stone Staircase, the one we just saw, popularly known as the Potemkin Steps, in one of the most famous scenes in motion picture history. It was very tempting to show it to you, but my technical skills are not that good. But here's some of the advertisements, and one of the parts of the famous scene is a baby carriage being thrown down the stairs. So that's why that advertisement has a baby carriage in it. It generated a lot of wonderful art. So this is from the movie, these people being slaughtered as they ran down the stairs. And from the movie, again, the baby carriage. Of course, that baby winds up dead. And here's a woman grieving for her child. And here's all the dead people on the stairway. I have to say, it's not clear to me who did the killing. I still don't understand, so I'll have to see the movie. I guess it was the Russians, because I think they occupied Ukraine at the time, and they did not like, of course, the revolution that was coming, that was sort of announced by this Potemkin revolution. Oh, so much for Odessa. I highly recommend it as a city to visit. It's a beautiful city. So Kiev, I first visited during the Soviet Union era, briefly, and this time also briefly, so a lot of these pictures are from Google, I have to confess. And it is a very interesting city and much bigger than Odessa. 3 million people live there, with a lot of museums and religious architecture, and a very good system of public transportation, including the Kiev Metro. The Dnieper River runs through it. Oh, here's another bloody scene. When Germany occupied Kiev during World War II, from 1941 until 1943. Very bad time in Ukrainian history. And here are the Bolshevik troops entering Odessa, and that's much earlier, in 1917. And again, so the result was a very bad famine which occurred as a result of the Russian Civil War in 1921. So these are the Bolsheviks marching into the city. And again, a lot of deaths happened as a result of that. Here's some very beautiful Russian Orthodox churches. As I remember, these churches, you don't sit down, you stand up the whole time. It's very possible this is Sebastopol, because that's my friend I'll tell you about. Beautiful architecture, really amazing. So the Dnieper River, I have a soft spot in my heart for that, because when I was there the first time, I was having lunch in a hotel, maybe the hotel I was staying in, a big, very nice sort of banquet hall. And I was sitting at a table with maybe 5 other people, none of whom spoke English. And we were enjoying our lunch, and it was very cordial, and there was a lot of vodka flowing. And the man next to me, I don't know how he communicated this, but asked if I would spend the afternoon with him. I really don't know how this was communicated, but somehow I agreed to it. And we took a boat ride down the Dnieper River, neither one of us being able to speak each other's language. But it was a very enjoyable afternoon. And I don't remember who this guy is. It's a lovely river. So these are some of the structures you see in Kiev. It's really beautiful. Almost as good as mosques in the Middle East. Almost indistinguishable, almost. Downtown Kiev. For some reason, there were, and I've seen this in other countries in Eastern Europe before, weddings going on. I think it was a Saturday afternoon. So it was a big production. And I've seen this before too, that the brides all dressed up in their beautiful gowns, walking in the park, walking in walls, walking all over the place. She seemed very happy. Here's a lady selling shoes. Do you know who this beautiful woman is? She was the first woman appointed Prime Minister of Ukraine, Julia Tymoshenko. That's what she really looks like. I kept seeing her pictures all over the city, and I thought, must be a movie coming or something. She must be a movie star. And she's the Prime Minister. So she served from 2005, very short tenure, 9 months. And then again in 2007, and then again in 2010. But she is the leader of the, she co-led the Orange Revolution, which we'll talk about in a second, and was the leader of the All-Ukrainian Front Fatherland political party that has 19 seats in parliament. But she was imprisoned, convicted of embezzlement and abuse of power in 2011, and sentenced to 7 years in prison in order to pay a $188 million fine. The prosecution and conviction were viewed as politically biased by many governments, most prominently the European Union. She's very pro-European. And of course, the big struggle there is whether you're pro-Russian or pro-European. So Tymoshenko was they called for the release of Tymoshenko as the primary condition for signing the EU association agreement with Ukraine. The U.S. international organizations such as Human Rights Watch and Amnesty International. She was released in 2014. You remember the big revolution they had, the Euromaidan, Maidan Square is where the revolution happened, or a big uprising, I guess, following a revision of the Ukrainian criminal code that effectively decriminalized the actions for which she was imprisoned. She got 322 votes, but there she is on trial.
Right here.
That was really a disgrace that she was put in prison.
Do you know if she's any relation to the Russian general in World War II?
Tymoshenko, I don't know.
Field Marshal.
Field Marshal. I could Google her, and I will do that later on. There she is with her hair down. There she is with George Bush.
Beautiful woman.
She is a beautiful woman. So this is the Orange Revolution. It's so interesting, to go over the history of Ukraine with all these things that sound familiar, which many of us, including me especially, don't know what they are. So the Orange Revolution took place in 2004 to 2005 in the runoff vote where the presidential election was claimed. This is familiar to you, maybe? The presidential election was claimed to be marred by massive corruption, voter intimidation, and direct electoral fraud, and the people revolted. You see a lot of these pictures that I'm showing you have masses of people on the streets. You don't see that. Oh, we just saw that, of course, last week, but ordinarily we don't see that here. And the objective of this revolution was to reverse the presidential election results. And it was anti-oligarch and anti-corruption measures that they wanted to be introduced in the parliament. They succeeded in winning a new election with Yushchenko as the winner, and he was pro-European. And I think shortly after that, the Russians marched into Crimea and took over Crimea. They did not like the idea of Ukraine pivoting toward Europe rather than toward Russia. And that's the big argument that's going on there now. Why it was orange, I don't know. So, Tymoshenko was officially rehabilitated in 2014, just after the Maidan Revolution. And they found that no crime was committed after her serving that time. She placed third in Forbes magazine list of the world's most powerful women, and she has worked as a practicing economist and academic. So she is still striving for Ukraine's integration into the European Union, and strongly opposes the membership of Ukraine in the Eurasian Customs Union. She would like Ukraine to be a member of NATO, and of course, indeed, it would be a big help to Ukraine if they were, but they're not. So this is the first day of the Orange Revolution in the capital. Independence Square, I think it's also called Maidan Square. I saw these troops, and I don't know what nationality they are. I think they're Ukrainian. But of course, there are plenty of Russian troops, which we'll see later. This is a pro-EU demonstration in Kiev in 2013. It's cold there. Cold here. And here is the opposite, the pro-Russian demonstrators in 2014. It's a pretty view of the city. This is on the outskirts of the city. I didn't see this. And they have an opera house. Practically every city in Europe has an opera house. We don't have an opera house, you may have noticed. Then Chernobyl has some effect on all that's going on here. It was in 1986, and it was only 62 miles north of Kiev. Fortunately, the winds blew, well, not fortunately, the winds blew the radioactive debris away from the city, but into other parts of Ukraine, in which the death rate was fairly serious. And there's some concern that the death rate is higher than it should be, and people are living shorter lives than they had before. So after the collapse of the Soviet Union, Ukraine was proclaimed an independent place by the Ukrainian Parliament in 1991. And then the 2005 Orange Revolution, and after that is when the people were battling each other about which direction to go in. After the Maidan Revolution, the National Police of Ukraine was formed. Here's a public concert in Maidan Square. It's a beautiful building. There also was this going on, the Russians drink a lot of vodka, and there's a lot of Russians in Ukraine, so I think there's a lot of vodka sold. I drank quite a bit myself. And the food's really good if you like that kind of food, which I do. As I said, you can get delicious pierogi at the European Deli around the corner. Amazing, really amazing architecture. So Kiev emerged as the most pro-Western region of Ukraine, where parties advocating tighter integration with the European Union dominate during elections. But the battle is far from over. In fact, I think it's at its height now, and it could emerge into a full-scale battle where Russians actually bring troops into Ukraine, into other parts of Ukraine, and people say that they're there now. Ukraine has become a much more democratic country in the modern era. Here's a very grim part of Kiev's history, Ukrainian history. It's a ravine. This is a ravine here, where there's some 33,000 people buried, mostly Jews. And it was carried out by the Germans and the local Ukrainian collaborators. And as I said, Jews played a prominent role in Ukraine for a long time until this happened. Baba Yar, yeah. And this was 1941. It occurred in 2 days, where almost 34,000 people were killed. The largest single massacre in the history of the Holocaust to that date. The number of 33,000 is probably an underestimate because other people estimate between 100 and 150,000. So I don't know if you're familiar with the Shostakovich's 13th Symphony called Baba Yar, which is based on Yevtushenko's poem called Baba Yar. And if you Google Baba Yar, you can hear the whole symphony. It's magnificent. And you can hear Yevtushenko reciting his amazing poem in translation in English. So I'm just going to show you part of it now. I'm going to read part of it. No monument stands over Baba Yar. A steep cliff only, like the rudest headstone. I am afraid today. I am as old as the entire Jewish race itself. I see myself an ancient Israelite. I wander over the roads of ancient Egypt, and here upon the cross I perish, tortured, and even now I bear the marks of nails. It's a very long poem, and then at the end it says, he says, oh, this is not the very end, but he says, and I myself, like one big soundless scream above the thousands of thousands interred, I'm every old man executed here, as I am every child murdered here. He's not a Jewish man. And this is the website. If you go to YouTube, you find the whole symphony played and Yevtushenko reciting his poem in English and also in Russian. It's very moving. This is a really a bad mark on the history of civilization, this slaughter here. This is a painting from the camps. Okay, here's another scene of modern Eastern Europe. Here's our friend. And Angela Merkel just stands out as being one of the most humane leaders of Eastern Europe. So they had a summit in Minsk and Ukraine in 2015. Here's the University of Kiev, appropriately red. Amazing church. This is the GUM department store. I've been in one in Moscow. This is its relation in Kiev. Stalinist architecture. There's these Ukrainian eggs, pazanki. You've seen these before, I think. And then, you know, at one time when Maureen O'Connor was mayor of San Diego, she had a Russian exchange thing, and Russian art, Russian artists, Russian dancers, Russian musicians came, mostly from the Ukraine. And of course there was a very large exhibit in the museum, not of these eggs, but of the eggs that are encrusted with jewels. It prompted me to go to the Ukraine, actually, go to Ukraine. There's downtown Ukraine. I'm not sure who he is. She's one of the foremost Ukrainian women writers. Of course, we don't know anything. I don't know anything about her because we know so little about other countries, really. I think I showed this before.
What's the great gate?
What?
Great gate.
This is the solar park that they have. I think we have a lot more sun in San Diego, but we don't have anything like this.
Mojave Desert.
In the Mojave Desert, maybe. Okay, here's another accord being signed in which the Soviet Union was dissolved and Ukraine became independent. 1991, of course. That's Yeltsin there. No. Yeah. This is a nuclear power plant. They have a lot of nuclear energy. It's the biggest nuclear power plant in Europe. It doesn't mean they have nuclear weapons. It just means they use nuclear power. This is an amazing thing. In Curitiba, Brazil, I'd like to learn how to pronounce that because there's a lot going on there in that city in Brazil. It's very progressive, but this happens to be where a large Ukrainian part of the diaspora is. And this is a reconstruction of a Ukrainian village. I'm trying to think of the Canadian town I was in that has a Ukrainian museum, Ukrainian restaurant, and a lot of Ukrainians live there. So there are a lot of Ukrainians all over the place, all over the world. Okay, so now we go to the Crimea, which you remember is quite a distance from Odessa. Actually, I went to Odessa from Crimea from Odessa, and then I went to Kiev after that, but we're doing it in the different order. So it's a little attachment to the mainland of Ukraine. It's surrounded by the Black Sea and the Sea of Azov. And following the Russian Revolution in 1917, Crimea became an autonomous republic within the Russian Soviet Federation. Though later it was downgraded to the Crimean Oblast as a state, the same thing as a state. And then in 1954 it was transferred to the Ukrainian Soviet Socialist Republic. I think that's when, no, I wasn't there then, but by Khrushchev, in order to bolster the unity of Russians and Ukrainians. So of course that's the justification they had for taking it over. And the great and dissoluble friendship between the two peoples, well, I'm not so sure. It became the Autonomous Republic of Crimea within Ukraine in 1991, with Sevastopol having its own administration. So it has a long history, and there are many ethnic Russians. I'm not sure what the percentage is. Again, on Google, it tells you the percentage of ethnic Russians and ethnic Ukrainians in each state. And you can see why Crimea was the most likely target of the Russian takeover, because it has now the most ethnic Russians. Oh, why was I in Sevastopol? As some of you know, I'm connected with the Right to Die movement. At that time, I was president of the National Hemlock Society. And we got an email from a guy in Sevastopol saying, I'd like to form a Right to Die group here. Would you come and visit? Oh, we had continuing correspondence, and he invited me to visit. And I had no idea where it was. I had no idea where Crimea was. I knew nothing. But I was in Moldova, I was in Eastern Europe, and so I wrote him back thinking that it would have a group of people to talk to there who would understand English. And I said, okay, I'll come. So I took the train from Odessa, a long train ride, but interesting, And there was nobody at the station. I didn't know what he looked like. And I waited a while, and finally he sauntered up and introduced himself. And he said he had no hotel reservations for me or anything like that. He said, we'll go over to the hotel now and meet my group. So I said, fine. So there were two men there. I'll show them to you in a minute. Oh, here, well, never mind. Let me go back to where I was talking about. And they were two doctors, and that was the group I was supposed to talk to. One understood no English at all, and one was very good in English. So he introduced me to them. We talked for maybe 5 minutes, and my guy that I was corresponding with left, never to be seen again. So anyway, I'm glad I went, and one of the doctors showed me around, so we'll talk about that in a minute. So Sevastopol is, that's how they pronounce it. You know, we have a city in California called Sebastopol, and it's very tempting to pronounce it like that, but that's not the way they say it. So it's on the Black Sea. It was administered as a federal city after the invasion by Russia, the annexation in 2014. It's now administered as a federal city of the Russian Federation. Although most Ukrainians do not think that should have happened. And the men that I was with definitely, this was before the annexation, were very resentful of the fact that there were so many Russian outposts in Sevastopol. So we'll talk about that. 393,000 people there with beautiful harbors and ports and a naval base that is Russian, the Russian Black Sea Fleet. And it's very militarily important, and it made it very easy for the Russians to annex that city and then the rest of Crimea. The city enjoys mild winters and moderate warm summers and becomes a popular seaside resort, mostly from visitors from the former USSR. It's a very important center for marine biology, and dolphins especially have been trained there since the end of World War II. So everything in pink, which I don't understand quite what this is under the control of the Russian Federation and pro-Russian forces. This is Crimea, and this is Sevastopol here. So this is Sevastopol, this is Yalta, which I went to next, and the rest of it I know nothing about, sorry to say. But I would definitely recommend, it's a beautiful area there, not densely populated, very hospitable people, good food, good weather, very nice. I think this is the hotel I may finally have wound up in. Or maybe this one, I guess. So this is one of the men. This is the one that didn't speak English. This is the one that did. And he was so cordial and helpful, so we spent the whole day together, all three of us, the other man, who didn't understand a word, I guess. Well, he did if it was in Ukrainian or Russian. And then we wound up back at his house in the hills of Sevastopol, drinking vodka. It was very nice day. I really very appreciative. And this man was very upset that the Russian fleet is there in Sevastopol, that you see Russian flags flying. This was before the annexation. I don't think he's a ethnic Russian, but whatever he is, he did not agree that Crimea should be Russian. So this idea that all Crimeans agreed to it, he did not. This is the part of the Russian 7th Fleet. I have no idea what this says. Anybody speak Russian? No. Someday I'll find out. So we took this ferry. Was it a ferry or a boat ride, I guess, around the water there. So Crimea hosts the Russian Black Sea Fleet naval base in Sevastopol. The ex-Soviet Black Sea Fleet and its facilities were divided between Russia's Black Sea Fleet and the Ukrainian naval forces. The two navies shared some of the city's harbors and piers, while others were demilitarized or used by either country. Sevastopol remained the location of the Russian Black Sea Fleet headquarters, with the Ukrainian naval headquarters also based in the city. That may be that some of these naval forces are Ukrainian, but I certainly didn't get that impression from my host. So this is what we saw on our boat ride. He also mentioned that the Russians have a separate university, a separate hospital, and a lot of separate facilities for the Russians who live on this place. This is a beautiful park that I went into the next day, and this is a memorial to Ukrainian troops, not sure which war. Oh, the Crimean War. I have to say these are things that I've heard of before and really didn't understand. Don't still understand very well, but the Crimean War is very important for this park. So it was a military conflict fought from 1853 to 1856, which the Russian Empire lost to an alliance of France, Britain, the Ottoman Empire, and Sardinia. I guess we were on that side. The immediate cause involved the rights of Christian minorities in the Holy Land, which was a part of the Ottoman Empire. It seems like a remote thing from Ukraine. The French promoted the rights of Roman Catholics while Russia promoted those of the Eastern Orthodox Church. The longer-term causes involved the decline of the Ottoman Empire and the unwillingness of Britain and France to allow Russia to gain territory and power at Ottoman expense. It has widely been noted that the causes, in one case involving an argument over a key, have never revealed a greater confusion of purpose, yet led to a war noted for its notoriously incompetent international butchery. There are a lot of wars like that around. This is a memorial to some soldiers somewhere. This is me holding a bouquet of flowers that was left there. Now, who took that picture? I don't know. I don't know, because I was there by myself. You know, when you go to Europe, there's so many wars and so many memorials to so many people that died during these wars. We are very fortunate. I mean, we were beginning to have a lot of wars now and a lot of, memorials to people who died in Afghanistan and Vietnam and all these places.
Civil War.
And in the Civil War, yeah. But basically, we've had so many fewer wars than they have had in Europe. It's a good Russian-type statue. I'm pretty sure these are Russian sailors. This is the Panorama Museum, where the amazing diorama of the Crimean War. You can see how realistic this is. And if I understood more Russian, I would understand what's going on here, because they were described. Anyway, people, soldiers, people very poor soldiers, massacres. To change the subject, the scene where these Ukrainian dancers are dancing in front of the soldiers. Totally different subject. Oh, this was part of our ride down the Black Sea. For some reason, this was playing in Sevastopol. I have to look up Uriah Heep to find out who that one. Ukrainian embroidery is very famous and very beautiful. I'm theoretically wearing something with Ukrainian embroidery. It's really not. You know, the interesting thing about folk art to me is how universal some of these patterns are. And this is a jacket from northern Thailand, but it could pass as Ukrainian embroidery. Some of the buildings in Sevastopol. Does that look good? It does to me. I showed it before, that's right. I did not take a train on this occasion, but of course I took the train to Odessa, from Odessa to Sevastopol. And the usual graffitis going on. This may be political. This is part of Crimea's Black Sea coast. It's really a beautiful part of the world. Crimea is, and Ukraine is too. This is one of those bridges where if you have a romance with somebody, you put a lock up there. In some cases, I think in Paris, one of those bridges collapsed because so many locks on it. Another monument. This is in the park where that museum was. I'm pretty sure these are Russian sailors' hats. And if I'm right, it sort of depicts the whole battle now that's going on between Russia and Ukraine. I'm not sure what that is. Lots of monuments. Here's my friend reading about one of them. You know, I don't think I ever knew his name, even though we spent the whole day together. Probably because it was an unpronounceable Ukrainian name. A little shop with mostly Russian stuff in it. Oops, here's more of the diorama from the Crimean War. So the Crimean War was one of the first conflicts to use modern technology such as explosive naval shells. That other picture had pictures of the ships, which hardly looked modern, but I guess these technologies were being used. It was one of the first to be documented extensively in written reports and photographs. As the legend of the charge of the Light Brigade demonstrates, there's another sort of thing that has something to do with Ukraine. The war quickly became an iconic symbol of logistical, medical, and tactical failures and mismanagement. The reaction in the British Isles was a demand for professionalization, most famously achieved by Florence Nightingale, who gained worldwide attention for pioneering modern nursing while treating the wounded. And I guess you could see some of that, the nurses in the field here. Here is me changing the subject very quickly. This monument's in the middle of the Black Sea here. So, Crimea's south coast, which is where we are, has a subtropical climate, very pleasant climate. Oh, now we go to Yalta. And that's where the famous, we'll talk about it in a second, meeting of the Big Three occurred. Yalta is lovely. Yalta is a resort city on the south coast of the Crimean Peninsula, surrounded by the Black Sea, has a warm, humid subtropical climate, and surrounded by numerous vineyards and orchards. In the 19th century, the town became a fashionable resort for the Russian aristocracy and gentry. Tolstoy spent summers there, and Chekhov in 1898 bought a house here where he lived till 1902. Yalta, did you know this, is the selling point, setting for Chekhov's short story, The Lady with the Dog, and such prominent plays as The Three Sisters were written in Yalta. And here's three sisters. Well, they're not sisters, actually. Two of them are. But as I was walking around Yalta, I actually went into a bank because I needed some cash. And there was an ATM there, and I couldn't figure out how it works. And of course, nobody could explain it to me in my provincial English. So two of these girls came in and asked in English if they could help, and they did, and I managed to succeed there. And so we went out and took a walk, and I think we had lunch. And when I was in China, I was not unaccustomed to talking to people's high schools. So I asked whether they go. They said they were on a lunch. I thought they said they were on a lunch break, and I said, "Would you like me to come back and talk to your high school class?" And they said, "Sure." So we did, but just the teacher was there. The rest of the class, I don't know what happened to the rest of the class, but we had a nice talk, the teacher and I, and the girls were just delightful. 3 sisters, not Chekhov's 3 sisters, because they were much too happy. Oh, this is the big 3. So remember this picture? Gosh. Raise your cane if you remember this picture. When I was in Georgia, I went to the Stalin Museum in Gorky, where he was from. And I'm still trying to figure out my relationship to Uncle Joe Stalin. I mean, these were the 3 people that saved the world from the Nazis. And then when you hear all about the terrible things that Stalin did, it becomes confusing. You know, I learned to grow up loving the man, but now I don't know. It's an amazing picture, I think. So, this is Yalta. And it has a beautiful embankment along the Black Sea where people stroll and talk and shop and eat. Several beaches, and the town has several movie theaters, a regular theater, restaurants, and open-air markets. That's the location in Crimea. And this is the embankment. It's lovely, very pleasant. Wait a minute, I'm missing some pictures here. Anyway, Foros Church, where people get married. So beautiful. Oh yeah, here's the boardwalk at Yalta. I didn't see this. This picture I borrowed. But I did see this. There was a cruise ship in when I was there. And there's a lot of tourists in Yalta. And about 14% of them come off these cruise ships. And they do what I often do, just stay there for a couple of hours, see the town, and get back on the cruise ship and eat cruise ship food. Disgusting thing to do, but I do it all the time. And I'm always so glad when I'm on the shore and the cruise ship disgorges herself, I'm so glad that I'm not doing that, even though I do it. Because it was so much fun to spend a few days in Yalta and see things that you would never see if you were on a cruise ship. There it is at night. It looks very pretty at night. Oh, there's my girls. Aren't they cute?
Your sisters.
Good way to look ugly is to sit yourself between 2 beautiful young women. These were not so beautiful young women. This was part of the downtown area. Fancy clothes. I think this snuck into my Yalta slides, I don't know. But there are McDonald's all over the place. Usually in the best locations. I know. It's an art show. So when I got off the bus, I walked around and found this hotel. And it was a beautiful location in a beautiful hotel. This is my balcony. And this is the dining room. And this is, I think, Easter Eats. But I thought you'd like to see this wonderful bread and egg. So that's the end. This is Prince Vlad bringing Christianity to Ukraine. And I hope you enjoyed your trip.